Howdy, Full Metal Cowboy straight shooting a review of Led Zeppelin's debut album. What I'm about to say is going to be repeated in 4 other reviews that I'm going to be releasing today. One for a certain film, one for a certain musical, one for a certain television show, and one for a certain video game. One of my little traditions on my channel is that I review certain things in response to that person's birthday, whether it be someone who creates content on YouTube or a friend of mine. And in this case, it's a friend of mine, and she has a birthday that's conveniently in December. So I could also throw in a Christmas film amongst the mix. Yeah, it's possible. In fact, I got one in mind. I have a feeling that the album reviews that I'm releasing today are going to be the contentious bunch in comparison to everything else. Perhaps not for this review, but maybe for the other album review that I'm releasing today. But I do have a reason for talking about that other. There is a bit of a tie-in, but you're going to have to wait to hear that explanation when I get to that one. So, Led Zeppelin. A rock band that formed in the late 60s, featuring the lineup of Robert Plant for vocals, Jimmy Page for guitar, John Paul Jones for bass, and John Bonham for drums. Do I need to give Led Zeppelin an introduction? I don't think so.
This is a very important phrase, so I want you to repeat it back to me one more time.
Zeppelin rules!
That's right, bye-bye.
Damn right. Led Zeppelin is highly regarded as one of the greatest rock bands of all time. And sure, some radio stations do overplay their songs, but Led Zeppelin's music is really that good. And if I hear Immigrant Song over and over, I'm not complaining. I got into Led Zeppelin when I was a kid, even before I was the age of 10. I remember seeing some Led Zeppelin CDs around, and I actually asked one of my parents, hey, who is Led Zeppelin? And I was told, oh, they're a very good band. And they suggested I give Led Zeppelin a shot. And I started listening to them, and I was really enjoying it. And as I was starting to explore Led Zeppelin, the impression I had was, these guys sound cool. Before I continue this review, I would like to make an explanation to a friend of mine as to why I'm reviewing Led Zeppelin's debut album on her birthday and not my birthday. And the reason behind this is because I'm extremely fond of Led Zeppelin too, and I would rather review that album on my birthday instead of this. I could have started reviewing Supernatural today, but Season 1? Maybe another time. Now, there is a great significance as to why the Hindenburg is in the album's cover and why Led Zeppelin got their name. There was a conversation where someone asked, what are the chances of us going down like a lead balloon? And not before long after that lead balloon comment was made, someone said, a Led Zeppelin. And that's how Led Zeppelin got its name. When Led Zeppelin's debut album came out back in 1969, it did not get a good reception by critics initially. But as time would tell, Led Zeppelin did not crash and burn like the Hindenburg as shown in the album cover. It flew and shined ever brightly. Also, second opinions were quickly made. And one of the things you may want to keep in mind regarding Led Zeppelin's debut is that this record is prevalent with themes of love, loss, anger, etc. But there's definitely a running theme going on with Led Zeppelin's debut. You know what? Enough with the pleasantries in this review for a kick-ass album. I really want to talk about the music. Ever since I started reviewing albums on this channel, Led Zeppelin was definitely a subject I've been wanting to talk about for some time. And they're about to turn 50 years old. So there's no better time to start talking about them, even though I'm talking about them a month early than their 50th anniversary. Good Times, Bad Times is an opening track that is so good at making the listener fully aware of what all members of Led Zeppelin are capable of. Great guitar playing, great singing, and great drumming. And about those themes of love and loss, Good Times, Bad Times is the first example of such themes. And it's nice that this album starts off with a track that is not really heavy, given what is to come right after Good Times, Bad Times. This song definitely sounds like Good Times, but what comes after definitely illustrates Bad Times. What follows is Baby I'm Gonna Leave You, which the speaker makes perfectly clear that he's going to break up with somebody. This track may be depressing, but Jimmy Page and John Bonham are on fire. I love hearing the guitar, I love hearing the drumming much later in the second track of Led Zeppelin's debut album. And I wasn't kidding that this album would have heavier material after the opening track, but there's more. You took me all night long. You Shook Me has a fascinating subject. Led Zeppelin did not write this song. Willie Dixon did. Also, upon research, music artist Jeff Beck felt that his former bandmate Jimmy Page ripped him off in regards to this particular song. As to what I think about this song, this cannot be understated, this cannot be denied. You Shook Me definitely has a blues feel to it for a rock song. You Shook Me segues into the best song on this album, in my opinion. There are other great songs in Led Zeppelin's debut album, but Dazed and Confused is a major highlight in this album. Dazed and Confused is such a kick-ass song, and clearly it is about a toxic relationship and whether to stay or leave. Now that's Dazed and Confused on the surface, but there's actually something more about this track in particular. Jake Holmes, a member of the Yardbirds, who Jimmy Page used to be a member of, sued Led Zeppelin for making a rework of a Yardbirds song. But as time would tell, the lawsuit was dropped and Led Zeppelin credited Jake Holmes for Dazed and Confused. And here's a fun fact, Jimmy Page played guitar with a violin bow. Your Time Is Gonna Come kicks off the second half of Led Zeppelin's debut album, and it's simply about a woman who is unfaithful. And the lyrics that are the same as this track's title is self-explanatory. Black Mountainside is the only instrumental track in Led Zeppelin's debut album. And did you know it's actually a traditional folk song? And also upon research, it seems that Jimmy Page's arrangement with his guitar solo seems to be similar to another version that was recorded before it. Black Mountainside leads into Communication Breakdown, which is one of the greats by Led Zeppelin. And as for what the song is implying, well, if you ever felt infatuated towards somebody and you struggle to find the words to say certain things, yeah, this song makes it very clear what the track is about. I Can't Quit You Baby was originally written by Willie Dixon, and this rendition differs from the original, and clearly this is another track that has a blues rock feel to it. I Can't Quit You Baby is a great penultimate track that does segue into How Many More Times. As one can clearly see on the track listing, How Many More Times is the longest track on the record. And here's a little funny story regarding this track's history. When the album was initially released, Jimmy Page intentionally gave this track the wrong running time. This was so radio stations could play it. since clearly back then they wouldn't play songs that lasted over 6 or 7 minutes. And I would assume some radio stations back then played How Many More Times, since it is a great Led Zeppelin song and a great closing track for Led Zeppelin's debut album. Now, while I do highly praise this album and do find it to be a great debut for Led Zeppelin, I actually do have one issue with this album. While this album has great instrumentation from start to finish and is consistent with its themes, there is some derivativeness with this record, which is my one issue, especially those songs I mentioned earlier that Led Zeppelin got into a little legal trouble over. Even though this album is derivative in a couple of areas, I still highly recommend Led Zeppelin's debut album. Led Zeppelin proved that they were delivering kick-ass music, and allow me to tease what's to come with this particular sentiment, but what they would put out after this is phenomenal. I'm going to be shooting a 9.5 out of 10 for Led Zeppelin's debut album. It's going to be a while until I review Led Zeppelin's second album, Led Zeppelin 2, and I want to hold out on reviewing that album until January 21st, 2019. Why that day specifically? Because that would be on my birthday. And I fucking love Led Zeppelin 2, so why not wait until my birthday to share why I love that album so much? So until then, take care, good day, and good night.